Hi everyone. Sorry for all the noise in the background. I'm currently on my porch, so because it is nice and relatively nice. It's about 80 or so, 85, which is kind of cold for once. I am going to go over basic shading, and I hope you have your paints nearby. And if not, that's okay, because this video will be here later. So, hi everyone. By the way, I will not be able to respond quickly because I will be looking at this preprint, which I've already started to fill in. We'll fill in with more colors shortly. So, without any further ado, so I will let you know that my paint palettes kind of look like a murder scene, as they were referred to earlier. Some of these are custom mixes because, well, that's just kind of how I roll. So hi everyone, thanks for tuning in, I suppose. So we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, my palettes are kind of murder scene-y, for lack of a better term. They're kind of frightening. And because I reuse colors, because it's gouache. If you're not familiar with gouache, it is a opaque watercolor. Hello? So because it's an opaque watercolor, it means you can rehydrate it and use it over again. So it's not as expensive to get started doing or working in gouache. So, so yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to also start hydrating my Fine-Tech palette, which for beginning scribes, this is a great way to do shell gold. It's about $30 for this entire pack, and cool thing is the pans are replaceable. They come out. There we go. They come out. They can be replaced. I have a replacement pan right here. They're awesome. They really are. So yeah, John Neal Books carries them. There we go. So I've got this preprint, and I'm gonna go ahead and paint her chitin blue, because I like blue. Actually, you know what? I think I'm not gonna do blue. I think I'm gonna do light purple. I think I'm going to do lavender and dark purple and pretty colors like that, because I live in Callantyre and, well, purple. I live in a purple kingdom. So let me go ahead and get my paintbrush. So this is a Princeton Velvet Touch. I like it for covering size 0. I will also be using, let me pull it out, not that one. I will also probably be using one of these. This is a Princeton Monogram. It's a 20-aught. If you hear me talking about my 20-aughts and how much I like them, this is one of them. So say hello, 20-aught. This is specifically the Monogram. I have the Monogram, I have the liner, and I have the spotter. That's not the spotter. It's a Monogram. I have a tendency, the round. And I have a tendency to kind of buy one pretty much whenever I go into the art supply store, because these are 20-aught brushes. They're not, the bristles are not particularly big. There are not a lot of hairs on them. I don't have, oh yeah, here we go. Comparison shot. This is a bottle cap. Those are the bristles. So you kind of get an idea. This is a 0 brush. So you know, again, not very many. So the point is, the hairs wear out really quickly. So even if you are babying your brushes, even if you are doing, if you're painting with them all the time, they're just going to wear out. It's just kind of how it goes. I also have this, nope, not that one. Also not that one. Although this one is also a spotter. This one is not Princeton. This one came from Michaels. It's also 20-aught. This one is also a 20-aught, although this is a flat shader. And I don't know if you can see the difference. It's a little bit more flat. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and hold the camera. So I'm going to switch over. So say hello. So we'll go ahead and get started. I already have a custom blend already mixed. This is, the purple is, it is actually a watercolor. This one is a transparent watercolor. It is the Daniel Smith. It is the Amethyst, and it's sparkly. It is super sparkly, and I really like it. So, and fair warning, I am a lefty. I will more than likely end up dropping this, so my apologies in advance. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to hydrate our paint. Paint. This is just a regular pipette. As you can see, it's been through some life. I also have regular eyedroppers. They work. If you have access to really fine pipettes, by all means go for it. Those are the two that I have. I'm going to use that one. I actually have two water containers. This one's dirty. This one's clean. Never the twain shall meet. So, there. In fact, I'm going to bring these just a wee bit closer. So, this is hydrating. I'm going to go ahead and use my my single-aught brush. Here's a hair, which happens with most of my paint. A hair gets in, and that is my hair. I don't have cats. So we're going to mix this. It gets a good amount of color on the brush. You want your paint to have the texture of thick cream. So we are almost there. Want a little bit darker of a color, not by much, but just enough. So when I do shading, I want to think of highlights, lowlights, and a base color. Right now we're going to do a base color. So, all right, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and start painting in the details. So, like I said, I wanted purple because I live in Callantyre and we're kind of a purple kingdom. So the nice thing about our preprints is, yes, these are photocopies. Just kind of want to quell that. These are photocopies. But if I go over a line like that, it's okay. Nothing bad is going to happen. It kind of, I don't know if you can see, the toner actually kind of resists the paint just a little bit. Now if you go really heavy with your paint or it's not properly hydrated, you do run the risk of covering it over. So, and that's a pretty good indication that you have too much color in it. So add more water if that's the case. If it is just covering over the lines. Oops, sorry. So here we go. We're just going to paint and paint. Getting more paint. So one thing to note is the number of folds. This particular chitin has a lot of folds. It's Roman. That's what happens. If you need help trying to figure out how the folds of cloth are going to look, in terms of lighting, get a blanket and figure out where your light source is coming from. So if it's right above, your light source is going to affect things differently. in this case, I'm going to imagine that the light source is going this way. So the sun is directly overhead, even though if this were or if it were a 3D object, it would be coming this way. Since this is not a 3D object, we kind of have to play pretend a little bit. So, getting more paint, more paint. So, right now we're doing the base color. If anyone has questions, feel free to send them forward. Type them. I will at least get a notification that you've typed them. And go up here. If you make a mistake, it's okay. You can fix most mistakes. I promise you. It is possible. If you go over the line, it's okay. You can fix it. And it's a preprint. So, like, I just really went over the line there. It's okay. We can fix that. I will show you how. So, we're going to keep painting. Yay. Get a little extra water here. So an IKA question. So why all the hate? So other kingdoms do all originals. The East Kingdom is one of them. Callantyre is not, obviously. We do charters, as they're called in other kingdoms, preprints, as they're called here, because our scribal college is really small. And we don't want to burn out our scribes. So we do preprints. It's also a great way to get started into doing illumination. For those of you who didn't go to art school originally like I did, they're a great way to try things out. Not every kingdom does preprints or charters, like I said. And Callantyre will do them only for the AOA level or for children's awards. Anything else, like my court barony, is a custom piece of art. My Herald Extraordinary is a custom piece of art, which, holy crap, if you haven't seen it, holy crap, it's really pretty. I'm going to add a little bit more water. Also, sorry, that is my AC that just kicked in. So, we're going to put a slight pin into that conversation. I don't know if you can tell, but the coverage is not particularly great. My the color is a little splotchy. That's okay. I'll show you how to fix that, and especially with something like this, which has a lot of folds. I'm going to water this down just a wee bit. So that way we can see folds. So, Brock, I hope that answered your question, or Daniel, sorry, that why all the hate. Some people just, like, my significant other has, his AOA scroll is on vellum. It's pretty amazing. But again, the Eastern Scribal College is huge and has a lot of people that need work. Yep, and that's the other reason. So in much larger kingdoms, your AOA may be the only award you get. Callantyre, we have a tendency to give out AOAs a lot. Now, that being said, we still want our award scrolls to look the best that we can get them, And I will say that I have my AOAs are really pretty, and a lot of people don't know that they're AOAs, but yeah, or that they're preprints, I should say. They are AOAs. They say AO or not. They basically say Award of Arms on them. So, all right. So we have completely done a base coat, and the next thing I like to do is to do shadows. So I'm going to start pointing out places where you could put in shadows very easily. All right, let's get this. So places like this, places where the fold of fabric, where shadow would naturally occur, is someplace like right there or right behind it. You're not going to use very much paint. You're actually going to let me hydrate more in my Daniel Smith here. It's going to, what you're basically doing is you are faking the concept of, hey, there is less light hitting this, also known as a shadow. So right now I am hydrating more Daniel Smith. By the way, don't do what I'm doing and putting the palette directly onto the scroll. I am out of hands. So normally I would have a guard sheet down, I would have a whole bunch of other stuff, but I don't. So also I have switched to the monogram because these are tiny lines and we don't want our shadows to go completely crazy. It is very easily, you can go overboard on shadows. Fair warning. So I'm going to just add shadows where I think they may go. And this is watercolor, like this is full on watercolor. So the paint is much thinner. With gouache, I would add just the tiniest bit of white. Or for shadows, I would add the tiniest bit of black. Or if it's a warmer color, I use a burnt umber, which my burnt umber runs really dark. So we're going to go ahead. Shadow would naturally form here. Or if you are adding a shadow by adding black, you can go a little darker. Okay, I missed a spot, so we're going to go over that. All this is going to be in shadow right here because it's behind something. There's a little fold there. And I'm doing little tiny lines. Now, if you do not have a brush like this, it is okay. Sometimes it's just making sure you've got a brush with a really fine point. My 0 has a really fine point on it. It works really well for this. But I like having a much smaller brush because, well, I'm a little extra. So. I really do need to get a stand. So my birthday is coming up, so if anyone wants to buy me an iPhone stand so I can shoot more of these, that would be greatly appreciated. You don't have to. Anyway, so I'm going in with pretty watered down, pretty watered down paint here. Again, so behind the medallion, I'm putting in shadow. And this is super subtle. So a little bit right there. any place where you think the light source, which we decided is going to come from here. Yes, if your brush is too big, you can cut out some of the bristles. I don't like doing that. That is kind of an up to you sort of thing. I personally don't like doing that, especially on the really tiny brushes like the 20-aught. If you have like a bigger brush like a 0 or this one is a 5. Yep, you could totally do that. Like I said, I generally don't. So I mostly don't because brushes are kind of expensive, and well, I'm essentially on a student budget, or at least a paying off student loan budget. So So how was your day? It is the weekend. Yay! CalendCon is tomorrow. What is going on this week for you? Or this weekend, I should say. I'm sure a lot of you are doing Penzic prep. In which case, have fun. Enjoy it. No drunk texting me from Penzic, by the way. Aha! So I'm throwing, basically reading this out. So yes, IKA is kind of rife right now. Aethelmark apparently does custom writing for everything. We do, our AOAs have fairly standard writing, or not standard, it does change per reign. This one's a leather mallet, by the way, so there's a lot of stuff about how people make stuff, but it is by the reign of the king and queen. So there's lots of Roman text or Roman themed text. Whereas anything that is GOA or above, it is usually by the persona of the recipient. So that we don't do standard text, and then there are places like Kaid, where it is the same text. No matter what reign, no matter what award, it is the exact same text. With, I think, the exception of peerage scrolls. It just, I need a Kaiden to answer that question. So... So, more painting. Again, look where your folds are. This particular layer is pretty thin, just because this particular paint can get really dark really quick. I will be at Known World Heraldic, or at least I'm planning on Known World Heraldic in Galantir, so come in and visit if you are planning on it. It would be awesome to see you. As over 4th of July weekend in Ames, Iowa. And you never know, I might be teaching this at Known World. So... So, do I prefer shadowing versus highlighting? I do a combination of both. I am spending a lot of time putting in shadows because this particular thing, or this particular preprint has a lot of places to stick shadows. And it really should be a combination of all of the above. White work is period. Putting in shadows is period. So is putting in a base coat or a base color. So that's kind of one of those, I kind of do it all because it adds dimension. It looks like something is coming off the page. So we're trying to get Pippa and Einar, or at the very least Einar, to show up to Known World. That would be awesome. So I don't know if you can see what I just did here, but so there a little tiny bit of light is going to peek through here. So I left that base coat going. Get a little bit more paint. The downside with working with a brush this small is that you have to go back to the paint a lot. So do be aware of that if you do get really tiny brushes. Like I said, I like really tiny brushes. I don't mind dipping back into paint. One of the other things that you can do with, I had a little bit more there, or at least with watercolor, less so with gouache, but things you can definitely do with a transparent watercolor is you can layer colors. So let's say something is not quite dark enough, guess what? You can go back over it and darken it up just a little bit. And that will also help create really subtle shading. So yeah, just kind of think of how the light would fall onto something. If your light source is coming from here, it's going to fall differently than if it were directly ahead or if it were coming from this end. If you're backlighting something, the light's going to show up differently. So, like I said, you can try this out by dropping a blanket on the floor and moving a flashlight over it in a couple of directions, and you can kind of see how those folds take light differently. Fabric also will take light differently too. So if it's a sheer versus a not sheer fabric, for example. So, putting in, hey, it's an Ethelstan! So, right, I am nearly done. So I will be switching over to white very shortly. I use a permanent white, which there is a difference in white, in opaque white. This is zinc white. Do not use this for, and it is well used because I go through a lot of zinc white. Zinc white is great for mixing in with colors. It is not so great for doing white work or for doing highlighting. This, however, is opaque white. This is Royal Talons. I kind of have a combination of paints that I use. I've got Royal Talons, I've got Winsor & Newton, I've got Holbein. I usually buy what's on sale. So, or what I can get easily. This at one point was $8 a tube, and you get a lot of product. I can't find it anymore, or at least in stores. Winsor & Newton is also about $8 a tube for 14 milliliters. This is 20. You can get this online. You can basically get all of these online. It's just I like going to local stores because, well, that's just how I roll. So I'll go ahead and get some white on this palette. So opaque white is ground a little finer than zinc white, which is why I recommend using that for white work, because the zinc white just kind of goes and gets sucked up by the paint, whereas the opaque, because it's ground finer, rests on top a lot easier. So and you're going, Constantia, there are two different whites. How can you tell the difference? And it's a constant use, and what I actually need to do is mark which one is permanent white and which one's not. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Go to Sharpie. Like I said, not enough hands here. So this one's permanent white. Yay! All right, let's get the brush out of my hand, or out of my mouth here. So and the paint in here is kind of old, which is why it's kind of breaking apart after it gets hydrated. Again, you want the texture of heavy cream. You're not there yet. This is closer to milk. We don't want milk, we want cream. Almost there. I can start to see if I run my brush through, it's kind of separating just a little bit. So it doesn't take very much to hydrate this. So, all right. We're pretty much there on the paint. So again, we're going to think about where the light is going to hit. I usually do right above the fold. And there are lots of places to put highlights on this one. So I'm going to do what most painters in period did and not go over everything. Just kind of fake it, if you will. So again, I go over where a fold is. Do a little bit right there, a little bit right there. There's a nice spot there. There's a nice spot. And this is where I like having a smaller brush. I wish I could. It is a matter of I can't afford to come down on SCA and Heraldic and Scribal. So I really wish I could. Because believe you me, I would be there in a heartbeat if I could afford it. So when you're doing highlighting, it is okay if the paint skips a little bit. I don't know if you can see, but those lines are not really well connected, and that's okay. You really don't want to like completely line it, because that's not how light works. Physics, it's a thing. And when you look at period exemplars, a lot of them don't have connected lines. They don't. So, again, really delicate lines. This particular paint, and I'm getting bit all to hell here. A lot of train of thought just left the station. I was not on it. So, oh, light. So one of the things that I keep, even though the paint is the texture of heavy cream, I don't like super heavy white highlights. I really don't. It makes it look faker, or more fake, and that's not my idea of fun. So a lot of times I will wipe off a bit of the paint. Or just go lighter with the paintbrush. So I'm actually not, there's not a lot of paint on the brush, and I'm not going that heavy with it in the first place. All right, can you all see the difference between what's just shading and no highlighting and what's been highlighted? You're gonna have to like tell me because I can't see you nodding your heads. So, and again, I'm using a 20-aught. It's a monogram Princeton monogram. If you want brush number, it is 3050M. If you have questions, this is a great time to throw them out there. Oh, good. Yay. People can tell the difference. Yay. So, one of the things that I'm over here, and this is all pretty well shadowed over here because of the shield. So it's not going to get as much light, which means I don't want as many shadows. What type of paint? It's gouache. I've got Holbein. I've got Royal Talons. I've got Winsor Newton. And then I think I just put it away. The purple is actually, it's a transparent watercolor, but I like it, and it's sparkly. That is the Daniel Smith watercolor. It is a transparent watercolor. So this one you can water down to pretty much next to nothing. And it's got, they use amethyst in this one. It sparkles. I'm kind of emphasizing that it sparkles, but I like that it sparkles. So, not particularly period. I can make my own paint. I just need to buy more medium to do that, but I have a whole bunch of paint or pigment to make my own paint with. I assure you, I'm really excited to work with some synthetic ultramarine. And I can even, I'm looking at making my own lake pigments with cochineal. So, dead bugs, yay! So, anyway, sorry. I'm gonna add some more highlights. So, I'm going to kind of point out something. There is a slight gradient where I went in a little heavier with the Daniel Smith here, and there's more white down here. I'm sorry that that's blurry. There we go. So this, the light's going to hit here. It's going to billow out a little bit more because that's how fabric works. Physics, light, yay! So I'm going to go a little heavier, and again, it's gouache. You can kind of layer some of these a little bit more. So if it is not as light as you would like, guess what? You can add more paint. It's okay. You can let it sit a little longer and pick up more paint, or more pigment, really. So I want a little bit more light here, because that is, we have a rounded shape. There's going to be light that is coming down from here. You know, if my light source is directly above, like above her head, imagine a flashlight going straight down on a three-dimensional object. We're going to have more light here than we would if it were here or if it were here. So, add a little bit more here. More there. And again, I'm using really tiny brushes because, well, I like my really tiny brushes. So, all right, heal up, Ethelston. Thanks for tuning in. All right, I'm actually going to switch back, once I clean my brush out, to the Daniel Smith, because I'm finding that I am missing some shadows. So it is perfectly okay to go back and fix things, because guess what, I do that all the time. Like these do not get shadowed particularly well over here. And the nice thing is with at least the Daniel Smith, or with the transparent, is I can go darker if I want to. I can go, it almost looks black. So, tips and tricks. If you are shading, do not add black directly. You will mess it up. It will look like black. You pretty much want to work in shades. If you are working in dark blue, then you're going to want to add black to that, or add brown to that, depending on if it's a warm blue or a cool blue. That's a time for another class at that point, because then we get to color theory. But like I said, you know, I don't want pure black, because that it becomes a muddy mess, and I don't want a muddy mess. I want there to be color, and I want it to be pretty. If I was being OCD and wanted to correct the one spot where I crossed the line, would I use more and repeat opaque white? Probably not. So what I would probably end up doing is either going in with paint or going in with a micron. Say hello to the micron. I actually have a smaller one. Where's that bigger one? This is a 0.3. Oh, that is a smaller one. So what I end up doing is I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to cover it. So see, I went over the line, but you can make it look really intentional really quick. So does that answer that question? Does that make sense? The other thing that you can do, like if you're using like vellum or pergaminata, you can scrape off those mistakes. Let me get my pen knife. This is a Master Francis pen knife. That's Purple Heart. Again, not a period wood, but I like it because it's pretty. It is super, super sharp. And I will scrape. There's my curved edge right there. I will literally scrape the pigment off very carefully. So mostly, one, because I don't want to hurt myself, and two, because I don't want to damage the vellum further. And then the next thing you do is you burnish it down so that you have a smooth surface again. So does that answer the question? Does that make sense? Stop me if it does. Well, I guess you can't, but you can let me know. So, all right, I'm gonna add a little bit more shading here because this could stand to be a little bit darker. I have scraped on pre-print paper, which is, this is like 120 pound. It's in between like copy paper and cardstock. I don't recommend it. You can do it if you are crazy enough. Like I made a mistake the other night and there's a little blob of paint. I scraped it knowing that I was not going to paint over it. You can add pigment. Like, okay, there we go. There's a little bit right there. I'm going to go ahead and take my penknife. Be really super careful. Put that there. I do mean really. And I'm sorry if this is a noise that bothers you. Bye, Tony. Thanks for stopping in. So, but be really, really gentle. See, that spot is no longer there. And you can kind of see it if you look really closely. But, make sure it is completely dry before you go in and do that, though. So, all right. But like I said, don't use black when you are shading. Just don't do it. It will not end up the way you want it to. So yes, this is a water-based paint. I would again be really careful doing that. Like I said, I am crazy enough to try it on Perg or vellum or something like that. It scrapes off beautifully. By all means, go for it. That's how they fix mistakes in period. But on charters or preprints, just be really careful because this is paper. This is actually paper. So, all right. So that's how we do shading from beginning to end. From adding flat color all the way to highlights and lowlights. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off and keep painting. Feel free to ping me if you've got questions. This will be accessible basically on my page, or on, not my page, but on my in my videos and stuff like that. So or feel free to get a hold of me later and we'll go over it. So yay! Bye everyone!